Hi there, this is Julie Merritt and welcome to our 10-part course on how to launch your business, your art business. So our first session is the myth of the starving artist, and for me this is one of those really key sessions and really key ideas that I think we need to get our heads around. But before we do that, who am I? Well, my name is Julie Merritt. For the last 20 years I have been working as an occupational therapist, a coach, best-selling author, but more than that, I have sold my art internationally for the last 15 years. So I know what it's like to be out there trying to get my work seen. Also to struggle to know the right way to do it, to have tried many different ways, but having found a way that really works and possibly doesn't work in a way that other people would expect. It's one of those slightly more hidden ways, but it's really very effective. Let's have a look at the idea of the starving artist, the myth. The myth celebrates struggling. It celebrates the idea that things have to be hard, and it's really not a great perspective, really. And it's one that's actually perpetuated within art schools. In fact, I have actually heard of cases where lecturers have been fired for wanting to talk about business, and that sounds crazy to me, but true, because there's something almost nostalgic and almost your art is seen as pure if you have to struggle for it. What you'll also find is that the myth is reinforced by the idea of the race to the bottom with prices. And what I mean by that is if you decide to sell your artwork on somewhere like Etsy, for example, the first thing that you're advised to do is have a look round, see what everybody else is charging for their work. And then you see that there is this figure. And then you automatically put your work a little bit lower in the hope that it will sell. And then somebody comes in, does the same piece of research and finds your piece of work and then decides to place their work a little bit lower in terms of price. And very quickly you end up with this race to the bottom with prices rather than thinking about whether the work deserves that figure. It almost becomes about your confidence in what you think you can charge for your art. And as a community we end up suffering as more and more people get educated that it's okay to spend hardly anything on art. So we have this race to the bottom with prices. That is reinforced by the idea that originals don't even sell for $24 on community sites. Well, I can tell you that I've tried to sell some originals for $24, but then successfully sold them for $1,000. There's something about the idea of selling a piece of work at the right price that it suddenly gains its value. But when we start selling our originals for $24, we are setting ourselves up to be seen as not being worth much. The myth is also perpetuated by the idea that people are offered exposure to create. It's not great. And if you imagine about it, people die from exposure. I know this is a cold metaphor, but it's not good. We're not there to be just to get nothing and to have a voice and to people to know our work. We need to get money for the work that we create, a fair wage for a fair day's work. There is that belief that continues this myth that struggling makes the art pure, that somehow you are a better artist if you've had to struggle for it, and I genuinely don't believe that. So let's have a look at the origin of the story. And it really is a story. It literally is a novel. It was a novel written by Henry Murger. It was called Bohemians of the Latin Quarter. Henry tried to paint. He lost all his money, and on his deathbed he turned out to be a good author. Not a great painter, not a great bohemian, but a great author. So good, in fact, that his novel of artistic life in the 19th century Paris became the basis of the opera La Bohème. That's a pretty awesome claim to fame, really, isn't it? But this story that he created was around four bohemians who were possibly talented, yet they were forever poor. They spent their money on all sorts of things, and any money that they made was spent on that bohemian lifestyle rather than investing in their art or trying to be prudent. That bohemian lifestyle obviously isn't prudent. That's what they were fighting against. And as a consequence, these guys ended up in debt. They were furnitureless, they were cold, and ultimately the heroine of the story actually dies of lung disease as a consequence of the conditions that they're living in. The motto of the story is that you basically have two choices. You live the bohemian life, and you either grow out of it and become rich and wealthy and famous, or you die. It's kind of a stark option. It's even in the story, it was never a place to stay. Yet somehow in our culture, it's become a place to stay, stay being that struggling artist. It is a celebration of artists in poverty. But we also need to think about the economy of the time, because this is based at the turn of the 19th century. Paris is a point in time where lots of people are moving in from the countryside to the towns. And then what happens is that there isn't many jobs. There are very few places for these people to work. So there was a huge amount of poverty at the time, and that poverty wasn't around being an artist. That poverty was a reality of the history of that time. Yet we have allowed that history to become part of our identity as artists. So my reason for mentioning this all to you is really to have a think about what it means to be an artist. Do we really want to be basing our whole existence as artists on a piece of literature, on a novel? And I really don't want that. I know as artists we can thrive. We don't have to just survive, we can thrive. And that's what I want for you as we look at our mini Launching Your Business course. So take care, and I'll catch up with you in the next session.